Hello everybody, welcome back to Lone Oak Farms for Farming Simulator 2017. We are in the middle of baling, so let's head on out to the field. Oh, and I see a problem right up ahead. We're going to have a bale that gets in our way. But before we get started, I kind of explained this the last time we were here. I'd like to do a little bit of width adjust to ensure we always pick up enough of the windrow. So I'm going to extend this out just a little bit, because in real life the baler will pick up a wider windrow than what would fit in there just with all the straw sticking together. So I try to simulate that in game because I like it when course play does the job in full and don't have to come back and pick up a bunch of little bits kind of lying about in the field. Yeah, course play would have just loved this bale. And there my width adjust is actually picking things up. But it isn't perfect, of course, so we'll get this stuff kind of on the corner here. We're going to need to do that probably on the other corners. Is anybody else like me on that? It's probably just OCD, attention to detail, I don't know what you call it. I just don't like leaving anything in the field. I like picking it all up, so... Oh, what are you doing? I go in the wrong direction. Let me just check my direction here. Oh, I see. Okay, maybe it's getting confused with the edge of the field. Try to get him up here, and then we'll see if he can take course. There we go. I think it's Reefy 1952. It refers to these guys as Crazy Pete and Drunk Charles or something like that. So right now we have Crazy Pete driving. Is that who it is? Okay, maybe Crazy Petunia. It's a woman. Well, this particular episode, last episode, I kind of showed some of the equipment that the farm uses today. And this time, I guess I wanted to kind of return to talking about the family a little bit. And just remembering, you know, my days of working up there. I think I explained in a previous episode. I basically lived up there and I started up there in summers when I was done. Well, I think I was in my 8th grade, just after my 8th grade of school. And that's the year my grandmother died, so there was a lot of people that just walked up to the farm, whether neighbors, family. We had a lot of family in the Midwest. A lot of them traveled out here, of course, with Grandma's funeral, and stayed to help with the harvest and that kind of thing. And I went up there also, spent a lot of time, and then the following year, you know, worked up there full time during summers from my freshman year on, all the way through college, basically. And at the same time, I also had a couple cousins that worked up there. And let me explain something. I know I've mentioned I come from a really large family. Mentioned in a previous video, or at least I think I mentioned it, maybe it was on one of my other series. I do come from a very large family. My father was the oldest child in his family, so his dad would have been my grandfather, the owner of Lone Oak Farms. And it's his brothers that are the current owners and operators of Lone Oak Farms. And there were 15 kids in the family, 14 that lived, 7 boys, 7 girls. It was a boy that died when he was just an infant. And I won't belabor to say kind of the order of all the kids and whatnot, but my father was the oldest. And the boys, the men, ended up all living in Oregon here, fairly local. They're all within driving distance, easy driving distance. And one of his sisters also lives out here with her husband. The rest of his sisters are in the Midwest, primarily central Illinois. They married men kind of through our church and met and got acquainted with them and married them and lived back there. That's kind of where they had their family. So basically, half of the family, if you want to look at it that way, half of the kids ended up in the Midwest. And two of his sisters, or one of his sisters back there, had a couple kids that came out and worked with me when I was up there on the farm. And in terms of the cousin lineup, as you might expect, my father being the oldest child in his family, when he would have gotten married, started having kids, I don't know that he was the first one to get married. It might have been one of his sisters. But as you might expect, I'm one of the older cousins. I think I'm number 4. And in terms of cousins, we just had a family reunion. I think there's 89 of us, 89 cousins. I don't know that we quite made it to 90. So 89 of us, lots of people, and that doesn't even count all the great grandchildren that are coming along now as, the grandchildren get married and have families. So I was number 4. Um, Another one of my cousins, James, he was, I believe, the oldest. Then there was a girl, Marie, and from another family. She was number 2, and Joe was number 3, and I was number 4. And it's James and Joe, my 2 cousins, I wanted to visit about a little bit. I don't know if they'll ever see this video. Hopefully I don't embarrass them by mentioning their names in here. But I really, really enjoyed my time, several summers of working with them, getting to know them. Had a lot of good memories, good fun with them. And, to this day, I hold them in high regard. Wonderful men. Whoops, and it didn't pick up the last little bit. Well, we'll take care of that. But each summer, and I don't know if it was a 6-week period they would come out, something like that, right through the heart of summer, if you will, to where they got most of the harvest in and some of the cleanup of it, enough to pretty well cover it. And it was needed at the time, somewhere in there. I think when I first started working, both of my uncles were single. They were on the younger end of my father's family, so they didn't have any children. All of Grandpa's other children were out of the house, if you will, and so they needed they needed some labor support, and we cousins were kind of it. So they would come. How do I get these out of here? Oh, maybe it's Y. Aha, there we go. Work those bales out and head on over to field 44. I notice here on the PDA map, there's a mod I made for, I just called it something real simple, IC bale. So you can see all of them there on the map. I thought it'd be kind of handy to see. I don't know if I'm the only one like this, depending on when you pick up your bales. I've left them in the field before, and then if I come in to work up the field or something, it's like, oh shoot, there, I missed one. So I like being able to see them, so I know that I picked them all up. But maybe I'm the only one that feels that way. It also will pick up pallets. It should identify different types of bales, depending on what they are. Even rocks, I think, will show on the map wherever they are. But anyway, back to my cousins. So they would come out here, and I basically lived up there. We practically became like brothers because we spent so much time together, working together. I looked up to them then. They themselves grew up on a farm in central Illinois. Their father was a corn and soybean farmer, I think with his brothers, And so they were a lot more used to the farming environment than I was, in terms of being able to run machinery, fix and repair things, and do those kinds of things on the farm. My father was an accountant, so and although we grew up in the country, I grew up in the country, and it isn't the same as being on a full-on farm. So they brought more skills to the table than what I had, and certainly put them to good use on the farm. And incidentally, one of them is farming now to this day. Joe basically took over the family farm, I think, there, and he's now also farming corn and soybeans, central Illinois. James became, what is he? Is he an electrical engineer? I think that's what he does for a living. So he didn't stick on the farm. And that happens so much of the time. Like I mentioned, my grandfather had 14 children, and only two could be involved in the farm. And it just seems to go that way where, the families, if you have a large family, so only a handful, maybe sometimes only even one, is able to remain with the family farming enterprise. And that's just life, that's the way it is. And it kind of comes down to birth order as to who's the lucky one to be able to work on the farm and whatnot, but that's just life. It is the way it is. And it also makes things interesting. I'm not going to comment too much on this, but when you have a large family and a farm as an estate, in terms of figuring out how to fairly divide that up, amongst all the children is a challenge. And, this is a large family in this case, but I guess I mentioned that because, I'm also an accountant. I'm what's called a certified public accountant. That's what I do in my day job. Same thing as my father. And we see it all the time at the office with family business. It is really tough at times to know how to help families fairly divide up the inheritance, amongst all the kids, to where everybody feels it's fair and equitable. And a lot of times it's virtually impossible to totally please everyone, or even to totally be fair. It's, one would think it wouldn't be difficult, but it really is. And if you think it isn't, if you have siblings, just wait a little bit and you'll find out when you go through it yourself. Oh, but I digress. I wanted to talk a little bit more about my cousins, and some of what I'm going to relate here, maybe some personal experiences, things that we learned growing up, and whatnot. And frankly, a couple of them are kind of embarrassing to me, but why not? I'll just throw them out there. Um, First, kind of a funny one, if you will. My name is Aiden, Aden. And I don't know, if you would see that on a page somewhere, if you had never met someone with that name, would you think it was a male name or a female name? Or could it be either? I've seen it spelled different ways, uh, but but I mean, to me, it's always been a male name. I mean, it's the only name I've ever had. I was named after my grandfather on my mother's side, and my middle name is named after my grandfather on my dad's side. So I say all that to say, when I was in high school, one particular grade, I don't remember when it was, I got this flyer, this literature in the mail for the Miss America pageant. Somebody, I don't know how they do this. It's one of those random flyer things that came in the mail, and they thought I was a young woman. And so it was, I mean, it had a number of pictures. It had, a brochure, explanation as to what Miss America was all about. And they had some stuff. I don't even know how it all works, but I think it's, oh, Colorado City. I think it runs state by state. There's 50 states in the U.S. I'm in Oregon, so first, before you become Miss America, you become Miss Oregon or whatever. So they had some information in there on how to sign up for Miss Oregon and blah blah blah. So anyway, all this stuff, I'm looking at this and going, what in the world? Somebody thinks I'm a young lady. And I have, to this day, I have no idea why or how they sent it to my home under my name. It could be they sent it out to all kids of high school age, of a certain age, or to all young ladies in high school of a certain age. And maybe they couldn't tell by my name and thought they would just send it just to be safe. Who knows? I'll never know. Although I would say, this is kind of an aside, to my regret, to this day, I kind of wish I would have signed up for it. I just think that would have been hilarious. But anyway, I don't think I'd have been brave enough to do that, and I probably would have been beat up by all the women that participated in there and wondered why I would have showed up. But anyway, I get this in the mail, and so, I was about ready to just throw it out, because I didn't figure it applied to me, and then it's like, this was one of a few pranks that I was able to pull off on my cousins. So I stripped out all the Oregon stuff that was in it, and I kept all the Miss America stuff, and then I wrote up this letter to my cousin, and I wish I had kept it. I don't have it. If I did, I'd read it. Um, but I wrote it up to her, and to her. I'm even saying her. I wrote it to a Miss Josephine, and remember his name was Joe, so I just kind of added some letters to his name to, confuse things. And so I wrote a letter to this Josephine, and I basically used every insult in the book I could think of without becoming vulgar. I think I called him fat, I called him a whale, and I basically said, the Miss America pageant needs someone of your size and stature to come be part of this. Well, in real life, Joe is none of those things. Not only not a woman, of course, but he's very slender and in good shape. But like I say, I was just messing around writing up this letter. So I put all that in there. I tried to make it official. I had it signed by like 7 different names that I made up every single one of them. I used different pens. I mean, I went all out on it. And then I put it in an envelope and mailed it to him back in Illinois. This was before he came out for the summer. So I don't know what time of year it would have been, just when that was. But it was its efficient time, and I just figured out to ask him about it, when he came out for the summer, if he got it. Well, the only place where he would have known someone was pulling his leg, well, I think he figured out someone was pulling his leg, but where he would have suspected me is if he would have paid attention to the return address on the envelope, which clearly would have told him, that came from, or, well, no, I take that back. I didn't put a return address, but he would have seen a stamp that indicated what post office, city, or what have you that it came out of. So, but he never did suspect. He got it, and apparently, I mean, it kind of went around the family back there. His dad was laughing at him, and I don't know. I just heard about it later. He was just shocked, when he came out and learned that I was the one that had done it to him. And it's one of the better pranks I've ever been able to pull off on someone, and he was a good one to do it too. We had a lot of laughs over that. I think I even, of course he didn't respond. I didn't give him a place to respond to. Um, I left everything in there kind of intact as it was. Is that bale gonna get away? Get out of the way. Oh, we're gonna push it for a while. We'll see if he tries to climb the bale. You know what? I'm gonna try to help him out because we got a corner here to take care of. I think I followed it up later and told him we hadn't heard from him yet, trying to encourage him to fill out the paperwork and send his application in, which of course he hadn't done, just like I hadn't. Left several more insults on the letter that I sent, and so I know I hit him at least twice with it. But yeah, he was quite surprised, and when he came out for the summer, and I told him that I was the one that had done it. The other prank that I did, I have a little more mixed feelings about, and this is kind of where, when you're a kid and you have ideas of certain things to do, some things as you reflect on them later maybe weren't in the best taste or shouldn't have been done or ended up causing harm or whatever. And, to this day, I still kind of wonder about this one. I'm going to open out in this corner so we can take care of this little schnibbly bit over here. I'll just say that's a word my wife made up. Schnibbly. Copy here. But this one here, again, it was in high school. Maybe it was the previous summer. Maybe it was the summer after. I don't recall. Um, but we would periodically write to each other. In those days, there was no email. There was no internet. All we had was a good old U.S. Postal Service. And so occasionally we would write letters back and forth. Nothing real fancy, just a few things scribbled on a note paper, see how things were going. Well, I somehow got it in my head that I would pretend I was doing very poorly in school and basically almost failing. I don't know that I ever said I had an F, but I think I even said um, that I was even failing physical education of all things, which I would have hoped would have tipped him off that it was a joke. I mean, it's you gotta be trying to fail PE, and even then, I don't know that it's possible. So I would be writing all these things about how I was skipping class, wasn't paying attention, and I just got a poor score on a test, or some paper I was screwing up, and the other thing I would do is back in those days, let's just say I used more colorful language than I choose to use now, and I filled it with all sorts of swear words and things that I don't talk that way anymore, but I put it in there on the paper, and I would send this back to my cousins. And I did this several times, as I recall, and I don't remember them saying much about it. I think it kind of puzzled them. I don't know that they were able to tell that I was just clowning around. Um, I was doing just fine in school. I was just lying through my teeth, just trying to be funny or whatever. And I must have been more convincing than I thought I would be, because at some point their dad, my uncle, got a hold of some of these, and of course he's reading this, and one of his first comments is nice French. And no offense to the French, but kind of in America sometimes, if some colorful language is used, sometimes we'll refer to it as sorry for the French, when there's some cuss words thrown around. So I know he said that, and I think it really upset him because at some point, my dad, my father, sat me down and he asked me about these letters, that I was sending my cousins in the Midwest. And he asked, kind of what I was putting in them, what kind of language I was using, and, I guess it provided an opportunity for him to have a good old father-son chat. But come to find out, I mean, what the things I had said in there were so upsetting that my dear uncle wondered if he should even send his boys out to work with me that summer because he didn't want them to be subject to a bad influence. And I gotta say, when I heard that, it just crushed me inside. Here, just trying to clown around, have what I thought was some fun, and here I'd, caused some issues in my cousin's family in the Midwest, and I mean, I just felt awful about that. So I, I don't know. I don't remember what all I did to straighten that out. I think I called my uncle. I think that's what my father asked me to do. So I think I was shaking like a leaf, even though I was holding the phone. I didn't have to look him in the eye. I think I wrote to him. Um, well, maybe I didn't call him. I can't remember. I know I wrote to him because he also wrote back, that he said he appreciated my note. Because basically what I told him is, there was, I explained what I had done, and that if he, at the end of it, if he still felt, I was a bad influence on his sons, my cousins, that I said there's no reason they should have to not come out. I said I would go find somewhere else to work. So, much to my relief, when he wrote back and he told me he didn't want me to have to go to some other place to work. So we patched it all over, and I don't know. I haven't thought about this for a long time. This happened a long time ago. Shoot, that's over 30 years ago now. Lessons learned, those kinds of things. I know we all go through stuff like that as a kid where, we do stuff that is, shall we say, ill-advised and cause some trouble, get in trouble. And, I don't know if my own kids will ever even hear this. They had their own experiences too that caused angst of heart to those that loved them, their mom and dad. And I suppose that's all part of growing up. And, if anybody wants to share, I'd enjoy seeing it in the comments if you're willing to share what dumb thing you've done or some good prank you did that was in good old harmless fun. I'd love to hear about that too. By and large, I mean, the memories of things I did on Lono are all good ones. This one here stands out as one that is less than shiny because well, it's kind of a character thing, I guess, and I didn't handle myself the best. So maybe someone say just laugh about it. So I'm not gonna try not to think about it. It's over, it's done, and I think when I next saw my uncle when he was in the area out here, I again made a point to try to talk to him face to face and tried to own up to it as best I could. But I've seen him a number of times since at that time, and he's never brought that up. So I think in his mind, it's over and done. And like I say, I'm glad he continued to send my cousins out so I could continue to work with them and enjoy them on the farm. And so, and we had a lot of good times, lots of evenings goofing off after the work was done. There's a lot of goofing off while the work was being done too. I mean, they were just a card. Um, Both of them, just always just having fun. And I mean, it's I think of my wife at the moment. She works for another one of my uncles who's out here who has a turf and a nursery farm. And I've been in there a couple times, and maybe it's the mix of people that you have, where you work. A lot of times, I know there's a lot of people that work in fields that they're not really interested in. They think work, they would rather not go to work. They do it because they have to. They like to keep eating. But work otherwise is just a form of drudgery, and that's really too bad. Some of it I think is all in our attitude. Maybe some of it is, our dreams for whatever we had as a kid were stomped on, and we don't have something we can look forward to. But sometimes I think a lot of it comes down to the mix of people and the culture that we have when we step inside work. And it can make or break. It's if you've got someone in there that is, a bully, someone there that is always down all the time and nothing can ever be right, just is a sourpuss personality, it's no fun being around that kind of a person. But if you have people who are friendly with you, and there's your boss is, bosses aren't going to be perfect either, but if they're generous, they lay out their expectation, they pay you decent, at least what the going rate is, give you somewhat of freedom to do what you need to do to help make them money, and then the people that you're around, I think that makes all the difference in the world. And like I say, I think it starts in the attitude. And I just, looking back, working with my cousins, these were things they just did because that's who they were, and my uncle's who they were, and it just, like I say, I know I sound like a broken record with the memories that I have of working with them. Very fond, and it's an interesting thought question to ask yourself as you look back over your life, and at this recording, I'm 47 years old. Um, is there a section of your life that if you could, you would repeat it? And I think for me, of course, each year that you stack up, as you get closer to the end and what's on the other side, there's more and more things that maybe a person would like to repeat if they could. And make no mistake, there are some things you wouldn't want to repeat or do over. But one of those things I think for me would be the time I had working on Lono Farms. It just was one of those times where it was just a blessing to be alive and just enjoyment. Hard work, but work that you enjoyed and people that you enjoyed being with. So I hope, I just throw the question out there. I hope everybody has a time period with that kind of pleasant memories looking back on it. If you don't have it, I hope those memories are still ahead of you, so you can have something like that. Because once you have a place to work where you have that kind of environment, I gotta say, you're no longer working. And if you can have that the rest of your life, you will never work another day in your life, if I can put it that way. It's something, it doesn't feel like work anymore. So, and here I sit watching this baler just continue its job, and I look at the clock, and I've already plowed through yet another half hour. So I don't know if these particular stories resonate with you. Like I say, they're kind of personal. They don't really have anything to do with the farm per se, other than the people that I work with. But but you know what? I don't think I'm so different from everyone else. I'm guessing everybody on the planet has had moments where they shined and moments where they did something that later regretted. And and so I think I fit well with everybody else on that. But for the moment, I'll say thank you for watching, and I'm gonna end the episode here. Again, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye bye for now.